Ladies and gentlemen, dear students, it's a pleasure for me to welcome you at Technische Universität Berlin for this occasion, and I'll please ask you to give a special welcome to the CEO of Microsoft, who's for the first time in public appearance in Germany, as I understand, Satya Nadella. My name is Christian Thompson. I'm the president of the university, and I'd like to say a few words. I think that the university is the right place for an event like this for mainly a couple of reasons. For one, university with 32,000 students, as we have, is a place of the young generation, a generation who grew up with email, SMS, internet, WhatsApp, a generation that's really almost never offline, but always up to date, and eager to get at our university the best education for the tasks which face them in life. And for second, TU Berlin is a place of creativity and invention of IT systems. Science meets economy at this university. In our faculty, electrical engineering and computer science, every day people work interdisciplinary on innovations of technologies, and thanks to the close collaboration with industrial partners that we have, it usually does not take very long until these inventions find their implementations. When talking about information technologies and how they change our world, there's one name that pops into my mind, and that is Konrad Zuse. Konrad Zuse is one of our most famous alumnus. He studied at Technische Universität in Berlin. His greatest achievement, as you know, was the world's first programmable computer, the functional program controlled Z3, which became operational in July 1941, more than 70 years ago. In that sense, Zuse gave an important impulse for today's information technology. And if he could be here with us today, I'm sure he would be surprised how much the technology standards have changed our daily lives. Dear Mr. Nadella, we're very much looking forward to your presentation. May I please ask you to come on stage? Thank you very much.
It's a big honor to have an accomplished engineer and leader of one of the largest companies in the world here in a technical university. We received a lot of questions, which I'm going to ask you in the following, but let me start with an introduction of you, Satya. So Satya Nadella is the CEO of Microsoft. He held several senior leadership roles within Microsoft in enterprise and consumer businesses. He was, among other roles, he was executive vice president of Microsoft's Cloud and Enterprise Group, something highly relevant in the present day internet, specifically in the context with the Internet of Things, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later. He was head of research and development for the online services division, and he was vice president of Microsoft's business division. Before joining Microsoft, Satya was a member of another big, very well-known computer company, Sun Microsystems. And on the private side, Satya is originally from Hyderabad, India. He holds a bachelor degree in electrical engineering from Mangalore University and a master's degree in computer science from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So he perfectly combines the two sides of the faculty four here, electrotechnical engineering and computer science. He is married and has 3 children.
That's right. You got it all right.
Well, I got a very good briefing by yourself, and the internet helped. So let me start with probably the most interesting question people had. You are the CEO of Microsoft, one of the most prominent internet companies for 9 months now. What have you learned during that time?
First of all, let me just start by saying it's so exciting for me to be in Berlin and to have a chance to be in a university, and a technical university, and sort of speak to students, because there's nothing more energizing in a given day than to be able to have a chance to talk to students who are bold and ambitious and unabashed in terms of what it is that they're going after. And it gives me a lot of energy and a great pleasure, and it's a real honor to be here. The first 9 months, I've spent 22 years. It feels like I've grown up at Microsoft. I did spend a couple of years at Sun before joining, and it's the only job or the only company that I worked in. And so in some sense, I'm a consummate insider. But over the first 9 months, I've had to make a pretty deliberate attempt at making sure that I can look at the place I grew up in from an outsider's perspective, because this is a business, this is an industry that is fast changing, and one has to be objective about what changes are affecting you and how you can ride these waves. And so I've had a chance to talk to many. In fact, I've had the chance to talk to many incoming students. I spend a lot of time in terms of the college recruits who join Microsoft to be able to be in touch with their opinions about their preferences for programming languages to devices, so that you really are in touch with the choices people are making. And it's just been a very, very rewarding experience, and I think that that gives me a sort of a perspective on what we need to do going forward.
So speaking of students, you were a student. You are a trained engineer, you were a student like most people in this room, but you also have a life outside technology. I hear that you like to read poems, you read tons of non-technical books, which is very refreshing to hear. I think it's always a problem if we stay within our confined world without looking what's going on in the real world. So I would be interested in if you could tell us a little bit about how important is it to have training in language, in art, social science, the soft skills in the broadest sense?
You know, one of the things that growing up in India, what happens at least, and I'm not sort of particularly familiar with how in Germany, how late do you have to make a choice of your major, whereas in India, once you are out of high school, and when I joined the electrical engineering, that was the last time I took any liberal arts class in my life. And for whatever reason, but maybe because of both my mother and my father were both, liberal arts folks. So my dad was an economist, my mom was a professor of Sanskrit, and I've always been interested in books, and it keeps me fresh. I mean, one of the things is you get into the work and you're in the middle of it, and the way to get perspective is to read something very different. In fact, even on this trip, I was having a chance to read an economist. His name is Brian Arthur, and he's written a very, very fascinating book on the evolution of technology. Turns out he actually debunks a little bit of what happens in technology. He talks about any new innovation as just modularization of old technology, and it's sort of a great way to think about how technology evolves, and it gives you perspective. It gives you a perspective on being able to think about and reason about what is your day job by doing things which are perhaps not directly related. In the beginning, I used to read a lot of literature that is sort of deeply interesting. I find that one of the common threads we have is that we are all human beings, and the best way to think about how human beings act is to read literature because it captures the essence. And since as I've grown older, my attention span has come down, so now all I can do is read poetry because it's good compression, right? It's actually a much easier thing to keep my attention span.
I have a follow-on question on that. I mean, I think it's really important. I try to do the same thing, but when I was a student and I was given that advice by my professors, I always thought, yeah, but how shall I fit this into my day? Because my day is filled with lectures, with exercises, learning for exams. Now that I'm working after my student life, I have way less time and I try to make space. When did it occur to you that this is so prominent and important for your professional development?
You know, I think one of the things that happens to all of us is somehow or the other, whenever you're doing something that you love, you find time. It's sort of strange, right? Which is, whenever it is quote-unquote work, you really never have time. But when it is not something that is work, you find all the time. So one of the people I worked for many, many moons ago said this to me, which is, I think I was probably complaining about too much work or something, and this wise boss of mine said, what if you did not think of it as work and you just thought of it as fun? Would it become any easier? I sort of wanted to say no, but later on, it struck me that a lot of things that you pursue are because of the passions we have. And more than any career development, do I think that somehow this is going to make a difference in the long run? I think that that's too much planning. I would say, especially for anyone in this room, follow your passion, follow the thing that's exciting to you, that gives you the fulfillment, and things work out.
So you answered already part of my next question, which was like, whenever you talk to industry, everybody says, of course, students, the new people on the job are the ones who bring the new innovation, who bring the passion. Now, I would like to know, because most of the people here in the room are students, how does your company support students? I mean, how do you interest people in Microsoft? How do you feed the new generation to become passionate about the job?
You know, for us, I would say college recruiting is just lifeblood for Microsoft. Something like close to 5% of the Microsoft workforce enters each year through college recruiting, and it's substantial numbers. In fact, I myself directly get involved in a lot of college recruiting. I'm calling college kids, convincing them to join Microsoft. It's a very competitive market, let me first say that, because especially for those who are graduating with computer science degrees today, the market is hot. It's always been, in the 22 years that I've been, it's always been hot, and it's very, very competitive. And the key thing that at least I like to emphasize anyone who's joining, it's the long-term impact you can have with your work. One of the things I talk about, we spend so much time at work that if it does not have a deeper meaning than just, work, then I think it's hard to sustain yourself. So one of the things that I will both like to see in somebody who is either applying or interviewing or wants to join Microsoft, what's their deep passion, not just for the work they're doing, but its impact on people. When I joined myself in 1992, it was the beginning of what became Windows NT. It was the beginning of a server operating system from Microsoft, and it was a bit of a, no one really thought that we were serious about it. But I knew for sure that we were going to democratize what was client-server computing in a massive way. And that was the impact I wanted to have. And that's what I believe, I had a great opportunity to, see that journey in its fullness. And that's the thing that I look for when anyone is entering Microsoft or any other company. And today, there is such opportunity for people here. First of all, the online courses everywhere, provide you the access. This is just we have a thing called Virtual Academy. So there's not every single Microsoft technology is online and is available for anyone to learn. We have even this very, very cool program, which I love a lot, called the Imagine Cup. And many students participate in it. It's a programming contest for all over the world, and students from all universities compete. We look and cultivate those things. In fact, many people who have participated in the Imagine Cup competition end up joining Microsoft and have huge impact. So we're trying to really do a lot of things to be reaching people in universities and even in high school. One of the things that I'm very excited about is our Minecraft acquisition. It's going to introduce Microsoft to a very different generation and demographic, right? Quite honestly, my 8-year-old daughter finally thought I was cool when she learned that we bought Minecraft. It got me some cred at home finally. And that's the kind of things that I think, people start getting enthused about STEM education and engineering in general and in computer science in general by introducing you to early programming.
So you're still in the learning business.
Yeah.
And if it helps with kids, I know how important that is. Now, you mentioned college recruitment. Now, this is quite different in the US than it is in Europe, and it's quite alien world to a lot of people here, unless they have been in the States or at least in an English-speaking country like the UK or Ireland. Now, could you probably tell us a little bit about that, how that works? I mean, it's quite useful before you go the first time into an assessment center if you want to work for a multinational company. And then, now in retrospect, imagine you are a new student wanting to join a major company, Microsoft, for example. How would you prepare for an interview?
Wow. You Bing it.
That's also online.
Yeah.
That's helpful. We can move on.
Yeah. You know, it's fascinating, right? I remember one of the things that I've said this story a couple of times before, but I remember my own interview at Microsoft. It was like a full day of back-to-back interviews with people giving you these programming puzzles. Those were days when we actually had pointer math. I think most students today don't learn pointers even. But in any case, I remember, you know, they would give you the marker and go to the whiteboard and, you know, here is a bubble sort with pointers that you got to solve in like 2 minutes. And you go through it one after the other, and Microsoft is very well known for all these basically algorithmic puzzles. They sort of sometimes feel like torture, but you kind of go through it all.
I think a lot of students here still think it's torture.
But here is the thing that happened. I mean, after 7 hours or 8 hours of it, I go to my final interviewer and the final question. And this guy sort of looks at me and he says, look, here's the question. You're standing in a crossroads. You're about to cross the street. You hear a baby crying, having fallen right next to you. What are you going to do? And then I look at this guy and he said, what has happened to him? I mean, I thought he was going to ask me maybe one more algorithm or something. And I was 22 years old. And I thought about it for 2 minutes. And then I said, oh, I'm going to call 911, which is the emergency number. And then he gets up from his chair and he walks me out and he says, it's time for you to go. And I said, what? I mean, I must have blown the question. And then I asked him, what happened? He says, you know what? You might in fact have the smarts, but you lack empathy. And oh my God, I was so devastated. I mean, I went back and I finally got the job, but it was one of those things which, quite frankly, perhaps I did not even understand it for a long time, that IQ matters, but yet life's, I mean, the lessons of life, I think, only matter if you have the empathy and the EQ that go with it. And perhaps more so than anything else, you will crack any interview that you hit. You're, capable folks. You're after all in a top engineering school, and you are going to do well. The question is, especially if you make mistakes, like I have in many cases and many times, can you learn? Can you actually empathize and then develop those skills? Because they matter, I think, to be successful in the long run. So
I hear it's important to endure.
Endurance.
Pick yourself up and try again.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I mean, this notion that somehow perfection exists is only in the books, I guess. And to me, to be able to sort of think about the arc of your life. Here's a fascinating thing, right? One of the things that I was this weekend, again with my daughter, playing around with this Project Spark, which is actually a gaming tool. I don't know if you've ever seen it, which is very, very cool. It's an Xbox thing which teaches any kid to build games. And it's nice because it tells you the hero's journey, right? The Joseph Campbell thing, where there is a hero, there is an antagonist, and there is AI in games. Right. But it is the ability of the hero's journey of being able to learn from your own lessons and mistakes. And to me, that I think is important.
Coming to a new topic. When you started as a CEO, you sent a message to the entire company, where you stated that our industry, I quote you, does not respect tradition, it only respects innovation. What do you really mean about that?
You know, the one thing about the tech industry, and quite honestly now I would say every industry in a competitive market only exists, or you get to continue to play if you are reviving or renewing yourself. And in our case, it's not about the past successes that you've had. It is really about new concepts that you are really going after. To me, that is what truly speaks to whether you're going to be relevant in the future. And to me at Microsoft, for us, obviously we are 39 years old now and we've been pretty successful. But the real question is, what is it that we are doing today to be relevant tomorrow? And you've got to remind yourself. In fact, you've got to ask yourself even the stark question, what will be missing if we went away? And use that as motivation for how you go about your innovation agenda. So that was the rallying cry for us. You know, there's no such thing as tradition in a tech business. Tradition, I mean, it's not to disrespect tradition. I think that there are certain things which are experiences and learnings that you should keep. But you got to renew yourself, reinvent yourself, change and make change happen. That I think is at a premium.
I recently read a very interesting quote in a white paper by Bosch, one of the big German companies, that says the only enemy that you have is not engaging early, because that will make you go out of business. And the examples they cited were Kodak, who still manufactured film, which is now a niche business, or retail stores without going into the online business. So do you think that business in general can learn from the more innovation-driven online or computer science-based businesses? That's number one. And are there also lessons that the internet business can learn from the more traditional businesses?
No, that's a very interesting one. But, you know, the general framework that at least I think about is, for any business, any organization to be successful, three things I believe have to click into gear. One is you have to have new concepts, or concepts that are novel, that are going to drive breakthroughs. In order to have these concepts and execute on them, you need to have new capability. And in order to exercise that capability, you need to have culture. So the three things of concepts, capability, and culture, you've got to lock into gear and do a great job of it. Now, the fascinating thing about an established company is your existing success now means your concept, capability, and culture are a great match. But the problem is you now need to go after a new concept. And that is where really the hardship comes, which is how do you explicitly learn to relearn or unlearn, where you now need to have new concepts backed up with new capability, and you need to change culture. That's perhaps the hardest part of any company. That's why people argue, hey, are startups easier to do? I mean, they are, because you don't have any baggage. But the reality is, in order for a successful company to be successful long term, which is very important for societies, because the only way to have great sustained employment and growth in economies is to have successful large companies. So therefore, this renewal that happens by changing culture, capability, so that you have the ability to have new concepts is what is important. And to your question, I think there's a lot for us in the tech business to learn from traditional businesses. I mean, when I look at the way some of the companies, especially in a country like Germany, where some of the industrial houses have a long tradition of excellence, that I think comes from institution building. And that's why culture matters. The values around culture matter. but it also matters that how you keep it constantly renewed. To me, a learning organization is at the core of what I think the traditional businesses or the tech businesses have to do.
Okay, that's the process. Now the million, or in your case probably better, the billion-dollar question: how does Microsoft innovate?
You know, there is not one rhythm to innovation. I'll give you an example of this. Take something like Skype Translate, which, by the way, is a project that I'm super excited about. This is it's in fact just starting its preview program, and it's very interesting to see the heritage of it. When I joined, sometime in 1994, I think, we hired our first set of people to do fundamental research in engineering in speech recognition from Carnegie Mellon into Microsoft. I remember the day even because Bill sent out this mail about how we have hired this great guy from CMU to help us with speech, because our notions of speech was, oh, we're just going to do speech rec in Windows. And it's been a pretty interesting journey since then, and we've had development of speech recognition on one side, speech synthesis on the other side. In fact, speech recognition got much better once we introduced Kinect on the Xbox, because it's very important for training data and live data. And you know, the first place where we got that was on Kinect. And machine translation, which is another piece of technology, grew out of what we were doing in Bing. And now we have Skype, which has real live data. And the fact that we were able to scaffold speech synthesis, speech recognition, and machine translation into one new deep neural net, and marry it with Skype data. Now think about that, right? It's serendipitous in some sense, right? It's not as if when we started speech recognition work in 1994, we knew that, you know, 20 years from there, we were going to spend $8 billion and buy Skype. But it's about large organizations having the ability to seize those moments where you can put things together to have breakthroughs like Skype Translate, which is going to solve one of the oldest human problems of simultaneous language translation. By the way, the one language we trained on is German, and most of my German speaking friends tell me it's much better at English than German. Hopefully we'll correct that. But that's the kind of innovation that I think that we are capable of doing, and it comes from some startup incubation type of rhythms, but then you got to also have the moonshots, the high ambition to be able to do the heroic work to make some real breakthroughs.
Okay, looking into the future a bit, I mean, I'm using one of the biggest technology trends at the moment, so the Internet of Things. I'm personally interested in that because we work a lot in that area in my institute. There's a lot of talk about how hardware and software interconnect, cyber-physical systems, the benefits, the threats. I think there's a very clear technical issue which still needs to be tackled, and that's the massive amount of data. Mm-hmm. How can we support that? I mean, I know we have clouds in the background, but still you need to transport the data. And then the next question is, how will this data be used and by whom? What will we do with all that data? I mean, to be blunt, we could drown in information and starve for knowledge.
Oh, it's an astute observation. In fact, today in Berlin, I've had the chance to meet perhaps more customers and partners on this entire, Internet of Things than at least on any single day I've done in a while. Because obviously, this being the heartbelt of some of the big industrial companies in Germany, this is a very hot topic. I think you all refer to this as the fourth wave of industrialization, and it's fantastic to sort of learn a lot about it. But here is how I reason about the Internet of Things. First of all, it is about as much business model shift as its technology. Because what is really happening is, instead of trying to make gross margin on the device, people are trying to make margin on the service. That's one of the foundational things that's really changing. Now you ask yourself, how does that change come about? One of the companies that we are working with in Germany is ThyssenKrupp, which today makes elevators, and they have a long history in Germany, obviously, of doing many different things. The the elevators that they have are all connected today to a control service that's running in the cloud. And they have a very progressive way to the way they think about the servicing of the elevator. So for example, an elevator in a hospital is very different than an elevator in a stadium in terms of, let's say, preventive maintenance. Because you really do not want to have a maintenance problem in an elevator in a hospital. So for example, they are able to write now contracts which differentiate between servicing between these companies. And that ability comes from data, because they are able to reason over all of the exhaust from all the elevators all the time. And you bring up a very important point. I think the platform providers like us, because our identity here is to provide technology so that people like ThyssenKrupp can actually build the solutions which transform their business. And to me, what has been important there is how do you filter signal from noise, I think is even more important. So it's not about just having big data, it is about being able to have big insights. And I like the way you phrased it, because I think what is at a premium is both on the device itself, how do you get rid of all the noise before you rendezvous the data to the cloud? In the cloud, how do you run machine learning algorithms to be able to reduce the data to data that will really help you with the preventive maintenance? And those are the kinds of things that I think we need to be able to be perfecting on an applied way, not a theoretical way, to make progress.
I'm now changing to a more pessimistic worldview, but no worries. It's just, you mentioned business models already. Now, as a technologist, or as a professor at the university, I like to invent the future, like you do in Microsoft. But is it still about these innovative companies, or is it more about the business models? There's a lot of technology around that really hits it big, which is very poor technology, and still there's a lot of money, even if it's, I'm inclined to say sometimes fake money, because there's a lot of promise, and sometimes these companies create big bubbles and then do not deliver, whereas an established company as Microsoft or also other big players, they have the technology, they have the technological skills, but it's much, much harder to make a business out of that. So is it still about technology? Is it more about the business model? Was it always about the business model?
I mean, I think it's always about the combination of the two, right? Because success comes from doing, things which are technologically breakthroughs, but you've got to do it at a price point and with a value proposition that's going to create markets. Especially in the technology business, you are creating new markets. It's not about just brand building per se. You build brands by building new markets. And so therefore, there has to be a combination of business model. In fact, at least if you look back at our own success, I would say each one of the places where we've been able to achieve grand success is when both of them have magically come together. The technical innovation with the business model change.
What comes first?
I would say they have to come together. It's not about what comes first, because of course you could say all you have is a business model transformation and no technology, then you have nothing. But if you have the technology but you don't have the business model, or I would say beyond a business model, a unique way to get to market, then you're not going to realize the potential.
Does the Internet of Things have a business model? I'm trying to pick your brain a little bit because, of course, as a technology provider as well on the research side, that's what I'm being asked.
No, I absolutely do believe so. I think that we just talked about it, which is if you believe that every sensor, everything in the world is a connected thing, then the question is, does that connected thing have more value than what the thing on its isolation had? That's the question that needs to be answered for a business model. And I absolutely believe so. So the question is, can you actually upgrade that thing in a much more, iterative way? Can the lifetime maintenance of that thing be reduced? Does that benefit customers? So I think there are a variety of ways we can go at it.
Let me challenge you.
What is that?
Let me challenge you.
Okay. This is all off script, by the way.
I apologize for that, but you're used to that. I'm my parents now. How do you make my life better with the Internet of Things?
You're who?
My parents.
Oh, your parents.
65-year-olds. So how do you make my life better, Mr. Microsoft?
You know, one of the things I think about is I have a son who is 18 years old, who is a severely handicapped kid. And when I think about the kind of equipment, both prosthetics versus even the thing that we, in fact, the prosthetic bed we use for him, the technology shifts that have happened in the last 5 years and the quality of life he gets to enjoy because of it are magical. As a parent, I feel that those are the kinds, physical things that are getting smarter can have profound impact. One of the projects we just recently did in the UK, which we talked about, I think, last week, was for visually impaired people. We did a project where we were able to create a 3D soundscape, which allowed them to have freedom of movement by just using sound. And that's empowering. And one of the things I think about is, if you really look at people, you know, especially as populations are growing older, assisted living is becoming more expensive. I think that technology and this Internet of Things can have a profound quality of life and delivery of healthcare impact.
I really like that vision, because I think it also conveys an important message that, of course, there are technical problems to solve, but there has to be a practical need that we as technologists or as researchers can actually address. And I think a lot of good innovation comes out of that driver. So thank you for that. Now, coming back to the big elephant in the room, when you have a senior person of Microsoft on the stage, of course, Windows is in the room. So my next question is, last week I read that you're going to put one Windows on any device. Could you tell us a little bit about your plans? I mean, because everything is in the clouds at the moment, so there's very little knowledge.
Yeah.
What do you plan?
Yeah, so first of all, the next sort of generation of Windows 10 for me is not just another release of Windows, really. It's a fundamental shift to a new generation.
Why 10?
What is that?
Why 10? Why not 9?
You know, we just thought that 9 did not really capture the essence of a new generation for whatever reason. So we said, let's skip one number. And people accuse me of not knowing how to count, but it's okay. The thing for me in Windows 10, quite frankly, there's a lot of under-the-cover technology where we have layered Windows, where we have a thing called the one core. So when we say we're running one Windows, it's not about trying to make one experience be force fit on all form factors. We will have Windows from Internet of Things, 4 inches to 85 inches. It's going to be different experiences, but it's going to have this one core, but consistency of the experience. We're also going to have one developer platform. One of the things that I'm very, very excited about is creating this opportunity for any developer, anyone here who wants to create a startup. I want to make it possible for you to target the 1.5 billion Windows users as a target market for you by writing once and being able to target all of these. And even from an IT perspective, we talked a lot about Internet of Things. Data, security, management, identity become very important. And so having that consistency control plane around Windows so that IT can manage these things that are running Windows is very important. So that's what we're trying to do with Windows 10. We're excited about it. We're also not just excited about the technology, but we're excited about even how we're going to market with it, which what I mean by that is even the development process is much more of a collaborative process. We have over 100,000 people already joined the Insider program, participating, giving us early feedback. And so it's exciting to sort of not only change what we're working on, but change the way we are working on it.
I think that's a very good way to conclude that, because as usual, if you talk about interesting things, Time moves very fast, so I fear we have to wrap up. You have a very busy schedule. Let me thank you again for taking the time for this appearance here at Technical University of Berlin, and thank you for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much.